it's really, 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 really beautiful and important to know that, we don't have to know everything with our egoic mind, right? We can be free, we can be soft, and we can look at life as a process of discovery and awakening the truth within us already. So, hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. I'm your host, intuitive counselor, and spiritual guide, Victoria Shaw. And today I wanted to pop on and talk about intuition and seeking out support from other people like me or other people in the world, and how people sometimes, I think, have this misguided idea that if they have to ask for help, or if somebody else, they read a book or they go to an intuitive or somebody else gives them answers, right? Or gives them guidance or gives them information, it somehow means, right, that they didn't have it within themselves. Okay. And so that, it somehow maybe diminishes them. So I wanted to talk about that today because I think it's just been floating around in my mind from a number of examples. And I think it's some place where some of us sometimes get stuck. We get stuck in our growth path when we feel like we can't ask for help, or we feel like we should already know that. So we're kind of closed down to hearing when somebody tells us something still applies to us that we think we already know. And sometimes too, it stops us from asking for help in the first place. So that's what I want to talk about today. And those of you who've done a reading with me or have seen me do a reading on the show or have been following the show for a while know that I am very clear about the work that I do and how, I am tuning in to my clients and my guests and my listeners' highest guides, right? And getting out of the way as much as I can. This one has a little personality Victoria in there too, for sure. But when I'm doing a reading, for sure, I just get out of the way. I aspire to be as clear a channel as possible. And I think of myself as the vocal cords or the mouthpiece, right, for you to hear your answers. Because ultimately within us, we have everything that we need to know, right? You're born with it innately, your soul, your higher self, you're connected to source just like I am. And we all have those answers that we seek inside of us, right? But we're not here on earth in this solitary journey, right? We're here on earth to explore, and oftentimes we do find our answers or find suggestions or hints back at our truth from the mirror of the external world, right? Be that another person, be that, something that happens in our life or a book that you pick up, right? We are here to explore the human realm, and in so doing, awaken the deep knowing that already exists within us, right? And it's from that dance, the guides say, between that exploration process of what you have yet to remember or yet to evolve into or yet to fully express here in the human realm, right? And what you already know, on the other side in the spirit sense, right? And so it's really, 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 really beautiful and important to know that, we don't have to know everything with our egoic mind, right? We can be free, we can be soft, and we can look at life as a process of discovery and awakening the truth within us already, right? So I often say when someone comes for a reading, I don't have your answers, right? But I can help you find them, right? Our spirit guides don't have our answers for reals, but they can help us discover them, right? Because you are having your own human experience. You have your own perspective. You are exploring life in the way that you're exploring life, right? And then on top of that, you have all of the wisdom of your soul from many, many, many different vantage points, that you've explored earth and other realms to draw from, right? So that's your perspective. And any answers that you get from there will always be unique to you in the best possible way, right? That's why we do this individuated soul experience thingy, because expressing our uniqueness while also being part of all that is a really joyous event for everyone involved. Okay. So does that make sense so far? I hope so. I know I said a lot in there. Right. So, but a lot of times we feel like if I need to get it out there, it means something's wrong with me, or I don't know something, or I haven't realized something, right? And so the ego kind of shuts us down. It shuts us down, right? And I've talked about this before because I've had experiences with clients that were just very closed. They were just like, yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know that, and sometimes they do. Sometimes the guys are just giving me, they're just catching me up on what the client already knows, right? And I don't know it yet. So they're telling me, but the client knows it when it comes out of my lips. But oftentimes the guides say that's not what's going on at all. What's going on is these things are still relevant for the person, right? They might have heard those words before, but they might not be living them yet. And again, it's not a problem. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just that multiple sources and multiple suggestions and multiple nudges and multiple reminders are sometimes called for to keep us on track in life and to help us again, live our soul's intent. Right. And that's oftentimes what, a good intuitive reading or a good spiritual book or any other kind of guidance that you receive can do. Right. It's the same thing saying that, if your spirit guides know something, right, and they're prompting you to remember it, it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It just means that you're doing this human dance. So that was pretty much all I wanted to say, because I think that it can be a hindrance to people in a couple of ways. One, sometimes they won't ask for help because they feel that, wow, if I'm going to really be an intuitive person, I must have all my answers. Right. And people say that to me all the time when I ask them. I have my dear friend, Robin Friedman, who's going to be a guest on this show very shortly, or depending on the order in which I release these episodes, was already on the show because we never know. But anyway, my dear friend Robin Friedman is a master muscle tester. At least for me, she is. And though I am learning to muscle test gradually and becoming increasingly accurate at it for myself, it's not my strong suit. And it's not my strong suit with a lot of the kinds of questions that I ask when my brain is spinning. What do I want? What should I do? Blah, blah, blah. I actually love having her wise fingers check in with me. And I would say about 95% of the time, it's validation. It's validation. I would say some of the time, she says something and I'm like, yeah, I'm so glad I asked you, but now I know what I really want to do. And then some of the time it's surprising. And, then I feel into it again. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I think you're right about that. Right. And those percentages might be a little bit off, but she's very, very accurate. Right. But sometimes when we are in our very own life, right, it's hard for us to see certain things. And people, even Robin says to me, Victoria, you have this amazing intuition, right? I'm asking you questions all the time. You should have all your answers. And I do have all my answers in here, right? And up there, but sometimes my sweet mind, is not letting me receive them. And that's why I have coaches, and I have a mentor. That's why I sometimes ask Robin. And that's why I also just, still watch spiritual teachers sometimes that resonate with me, right? Because all of that is really fun for me and it's cooperative for me and it helps expand what I already know so that I know it in different ways and more deeply. And sometimes I even discover a new answer within me or a new way of looking at things, right? And it's always coming from within, my friends, because anything out there is always awakening something within you. And again, the trick is to discern what really lands and resonates in that really deep way, what feels right versus all of the noise about what other people think you should do that is taking you away from your alignment. Right. But I've had people tell me things, even random people tell me things sometimes when I was like, ooh, that was guidance. I needed to hear it. Right. I felt it. I knew it. Right. It awakened something in me. Okay. So I think the first thing I want to say is there's no harm in seeking support. Okay. And I know among my clients, I have many professional intuitives and energy workers and people that hear their intuition just fine. And yet sometimes it's really helpful to have someone else be the mouthpiece for your guides. For reals. And then I think the other thing that sometimes happens too, and I've talked about this many times on the show, but I'll talk about it one more time, is that sometimes too, our desire to conflate what we know, how we live with our ego, right? I'm a very high vibey person, right? I understand how to live in joy, right? I understand and live the law of attraction. right? All of these things can be absolutely true. And yet we're human, right? So, like little candles flickering, right? The light will just kind of go in and out and in and out and in and out. And sometimes those flickers, because the flame is so strong, those flickers are imperceptible. And then other times, it's like you're worrying that thing's going to go out. It won't ever. Don't worry, right? Your light will never die. um right, but we are always coming in and out of alignment. We're always coming in and out, even the most highly awoke teachers, right? And anyone who doesn't tell you this, again, I'm not one of them. I don't consider myself to be fully enlightened or fully realized, or whatever you want to say. Ooh, excuse me. But even those who we think of that way, they were still living in human bodies, and my guess is that they still had their human moments. They were still popping in and out of alignment, because that's what human beings do. And so the trick is not to identify with how awoke you are, or how intuitive you are, or how you know things, right? That's the ego way of doing things, right? What's much more exciting is to allow yourself to exist a lot of times in that space of not knowing, and be open to possibility. Yes, you can be unwavering in your truth when your truth is anchored to what feels right and good to you. Right. And you can also honor your perspective, right? There are times when my perspective might not exactly be my truth, right? Because it might not be so loving toward, I mean, I might be annoyed, or, like on the higher sense, I'm sure, everything is okay. But there's times, right, when my perspective is a little disgruntled, right? And I want to own that, and I want to see that, and I want to sit with that. And, sometimes I want to use it to set a boundary, or to make a choice of who I want to associate with, or what I want to do. Right. And all these things, this is really great human feedback, right? That you really want to pay attention to. You don't want to gloss over. You don't want to give your power to somebody else to say, how you can feel, and what you can want, and what you believe is real and true. Okay. So I'm not telling you to do that. Right. But I got to find the thread again, because I lost her. But oftentimes, what we do instead is we get kind of stubborn, like we get stubborn and we say, this is my truth, or I have these answers, or I know this. Right. And so I don't need to hear anything from out there. And when this happens, often the guides say it comes from a place of ego, right? Of conflating, of believing that our knowing, or our demonstrating like a realized way, makes us somehow better, superior than other people, right? It differentiates us. It makes us feel good about ourselves, because we are somehow better than everybody else. And I got news for you, friends. You're not. Now, celebrate your wins, celebrate your successes. If you have those instant manifestations that sometimes come our way, celebrate them. If you find that, you don't get stirred up as much by things that used to drive you crazy, and now you're kind of chill, and, you're flowing more with life, celebrate that, but not from a place of being better than anybody else, not from a place of feeling like I have to be like that to be good, because that's another one, right? Right. But just celebrate the wins when they're happening. But the other one that just kind of was pointed out to me as I was speaking, and the guides are having me pause, is this idea too that sometimes, again, we think there's good or bad, right? It's good to act like an enlightened person. It's good to do certain things, and not good to do other things. And your higher self, soul, and source and guides don't look at it that way so much, right? They say good and bad could be easily replaced with words like I prefer, I don't prefer. Feels good right now, feels less good right now, right? Because those are much more neutral terms, right? And so being in alignment feels good. That's why we do it. Being out of alignment feels a little less good. So, it tells us that we're out of alignment, and we can search for ways and to get back into alignment so that we can feel good. But being out of alignment is also part of human life. And when we get stuck in ego, or when we, fall off the wagon, so to speak, it's just an opportunity to celebrate ourselves even more, and give that human part, a big hug, maybe a little kiss, because I love doing that, right? And saying it's okay. It's okay. This is what I signed up for, right? And when we can recognize what we don't know, right? Or where we're maybe not where we think we should be or we want to be in a moment with love and compassion and unconditional acceptance. We will immediately find ourselves right back in alignment. That's really all it takes. So I'm good about to wrap this one up. I want to see if anything else comes through. But the other thing that they were saying when I was starting to ponder this episode in my head is that a lot of you early on had parent figures, or teacher figures, right, that were responsible or felt they were responsible for teaching you the truth, right? Teaching you what was right, what was wrong, what was good or bad, what you could want, what you couldn't want, how you could feel, how you couldn't feel, right? And you felt disempowered and inhibited from that. And so sometimes, too, from that need, right, early on to have our own answers and to not be thwarted by other people telling us what we need to do, a stubbornness ensued a little bit inside of you where you were just like, I can do this by myself. And, if you're telling me what to do, it means something's wrong with me and I don't know. And I'm thinking about that too. I've worked with so many adolescents over the years, so many, and so many parents of adolescents over the years. And one of the things that I often notice is at a certain age, when the parent is giving the child advice, the way the child is interpreting that advice at that age, when they're wanting to differentiate and find their own way, is as the parent saying, I don't, you don't know anything, I know everything. Right? It starts like right there. And I always tell my parents, what you want to do now is help them find their answers. And you can tell them what you think after you've helped them figure it out, right? They usually know what we think, to be honest, because we've usually told them many times, right? But you want to help them find their answers and you want to empower them, because those are the kids that will come back to you when they're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, depending on how long y'all live, right? And consider you as a valued resource, right? Because they're going to be open to receiving your perspective because they know that you're not going to impose that perspective on them and that you trust that they have their own answers and you're just, another source of another muse, another source of information or wisdom that they can play upon and then try it on for size and see if it fits. Okay. But we didn't all have that experience. So if you didn't have that experience, I'm inviting you now to do that for yourself, right? Do that for yourself. And if you have children that age, do that for your kids. Because we really do all have the answers inside of us. And yet, it's a beautiful world with so much inspiration and so much learning to be had when we can allow ourselves to be in that space of not knowing everything, right? And allowing our answers to come from us. Sometimes bubbling up from our intuition because it's just easy and direct, or from our spirit guides, or from, a card deck, or from a friend, or from a parent, or from, somebody like me. But whatever you do and whatever you find it, know that inside it'll fit, right? And if it doesn't feel right now, let it go. That's what I always say. If it's something you need to hear, you'll get another chance. You'll hear it again. All right. That's all I got on this one. This was really fun. I'm glad I hopped down and came in front of the camera. I hope you guys love this one as much as I did, because you know how much I love doing this. And if you would like a reading by myself or somebody else, but my podcast. So I'll share about me. Go to my website, victoriashawintuitive.com, and you can see all of my offerings there. But whatever you do, keep listening to the podcast, like, subscribe, do all the stuff, and know that I'm so grateful and love each and every one of you. And I trust that you all have all of your answers too. Love you all again, and namaste.